On. So I am just on a roll with my filming, so I'm gonna keep going. I hope you will forgive kind of the not amazing lighting, but I feel like on booktube we are very patient when lighting isn't the best because we just want to hear about the books, right? So it's just a wintertime problem. We are over the hump. Winter solstice has happened, so hopefully filming in the afternoon won't be quite as challenging in a couple months. But I thought it would be really fun to do a Victorian wrap up for 2019. And I have here for you every single thing that I read that was Victorian in the year of 2019, which I was astounded. The number, are you ready? Drum roll, please, was 29. I read 29 books, plays, poetry collections, all from the Victorian era, and I am really looking forward to telling you about them, especially because I have ranked them. So I will go from highest to lowest, or rather from least liked to most liked. That's what I want to say. So the one that is my least favorite, and Katie from Books and Things, if you're watching, I hope this doesn't make you too sad, but unfortunately it was Olive by Dinah Mullet-Craik. It was one of those books that as I was reading it, and I knew how much Katie loved it, I kind of thought, are we reading the same book? Like, we love so many of the same Victorian books. Like, I was just so shocked at having a Victorian book that we had such a different reading experience on. But I think it's just a case of Dinah Mullet-Craik's writing style does not suit me. It just feels like pulling teeth to get through her books. They feel so challenging, and I don't know what it is. There's just something about them. I feel I just have such a hard time reading them, and there was just not much about Olive I liked, unfortunately. Then next is No Name by Wilkie Collins. This was a case of there were two sisters in this book, and one of the sisters I thought was so fascinating. I would have loved an entire book about her. And instead, we are given the majority of the book about the other sister. We follow her. And there was just a lot less nuance to her character. And I did not enjoy it that much, unfortunately. But don't worry. It's not the end of my reading Wilkie Collins. And there may be another Wilkie Collins on this list. Then Barnaby Rudge by Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens, it seems to be either I really like his books or I really don't like them. And this is one that there were just not many characters I felt connected to. And yeah, I just did not feel invested in this story. And I just didn't interest me, unfortunately. But I am really, really excited this month to be reading Martin Chuzzlewit. I don't know. I just have a good feeling about Martin Chuzzlewit and what I'm going to think of it. Then The Princess and the Goblin by George MacDonald. This is one where if I had not read other fantasy, I think I would have really, really liked it. And I do really admire, he's kind of one of, the fathers of the fantasy genre. Tolkien and Lewis loved him. So it was, I admired the creativity that he had there. But there's a lot of creativity and a lot of plot, but not as much characterization. Then several Oscar Wilde plays, which I've just decided that Oscar Wilde is just an author that's really too cynical for me, unfortunately. He's amusing, but I don't like the cynical undertone to his plays, because then I'm like, this isn't funny. Like, it just makes me sad for these people, their insincerity. But he's really, really skilled. Like, they're very, very clever plays. Not denying that at all. So A Woman of No Importance, An Ideal Husband, Lady Windermere's Fan, and The Importance of Being Earnest. Next on the list is Vanity Fair, where it's a really amazing, astounding plot. William Thackeray, he covers a lot. He covers decades of these characters' lives, and the Napoleonic Wars are happening. So he's really got a big, grandiose type plot. But I don't know how else to say it. Like, I couldn't be bothered. I know that sounds really snarky, and I don't mean to be snarky, but I was not invested. I ended up, I said, in a wrap up that Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell is a retelling of Vanity Fair, and I would take Gone with the Wind every time. So I'm really glad I can say now that I've read Vanity Fair. I'm really enjoying the new miniseries that ITV made, or the BBC made, and yeah. Next on the list is Hard Times by Charles Dickens. And this is one that I read with Tom from Tom Reads Things, and that was just what made it so much fun. Okay, so I did lie about Dickens either loving or hating them, because this is one that was kind of medium, where it started out, it had a lot of potential, and then the ending, just things were wrapped up really rapidly. And there were several characters that I really enjoyed, different bits and pieces of this book that I liked, but the overall story arc kind of fell a little bit flat for me, unfortunately. Next on the list is Love and Mr. Lewisham by H.G. Wells. This is a book that I had rated, I think, 3 stars, and then after going to book club, I promptly changed it to 4 stars. So this is, it's a very intense character study of this couple, and kind of the ways that a couple can misunderstand one another. And it just felt, the arguments, the disagreements that this couple has felt so real. I was like, this is how a real argument goes. And there was so much commentary on society and climbing on the rungs, you know, trying to bring yourself up, raise yourself up in society. And so it was a really thought-provoking novel. So definitely not a fun one, but one that was really interesting to read. Then I have Dr. Wardle's School by Anthony Trollope. So now we're getting into the ones that, these are all ones that I definitely enjoyed. Dr. Wardle's School was, it's an Anthony Trollope that's a really like bread and butter one. It's really short. And so if you like his writing style, and I think if you're in a reading slump, this would be a really great one to read, because the resolution happens, I think it's like in less than 300 pages. And so you get a few characters that you get to know, and then there's this problem where there is some sort of secret that Mr. and Mrs. Peacock have from their past, and you don't know what it is, but you want to find out what it is and see kind of what the repercussions will be because of that secret. So a really satisfying, short and sweet Victorian novel. Then I have, coming in at number 17, I should have done the numbers before that, but I just forgot. So number 17 is The Widow Barnaby by Frances Trollope. So it was really fun to read one from her, just knowing that she was Anthony Trollope's mother. And this was just a really like hilarious one of, you know, The Widow Barnaby, the lengths that she will go to. And she just, I feel like she is kind of like a, what do I want to say? I cannot, not a stereotype, kind of a caricature. That's the word I'm thinking of. A caricature of Hyacinth Clare from Wives and Daughters. She's kind of this caricature of that. Like if Hyacinth was even more like Hyacinth, this is how she would be. And there's just a lot of funny things that happen in this. You do feel really sorry for one of the characters, but overall, I think I just found it highly amusing and diverting. And I think Jane Austen fans would really enjoy it. Using the word diverting makes me think of Jane Austen. Then The Fisherman's Lady by George MacDonald. So this was another George MacDonald that I read, and this is one that I definitely preferred. It was a lot more focused on the characters and the story, and this was a nice story. It had a little bit of everything. There was some mystery, there was some romance. You got the local history of the town, and it's this rural Scottish village. And I loved getting to know the different people and getting to see kind of the different classes that were in the town. And there was a love of books in the story. And yeah, it was just a really nice, nice little Victorian novel that I definitely recommend. Then The Last Chronicle of Barset by Anthony Trollope. I really enjoyed reading this. I still think, shockingly, my favorite in the Barsetshire Chronicles is Framley Parsonage, which I did not expect to say, because there are some really great characters in these stories, but I think just something about Framley Parsonage. But that is not to say that I did not enjoy The Last Chronicle of Barset. I most definitely did, and I'm so happy that I can say I completed the Barset Chronicles, and I definitely will be reading more Anthony Trollope. I have so many like Victorian reading priorities, so I'm not sure where, you know, Trollope's books will fall in there. But I'll definitely be picking up more Trollope in the future. Then I have The Goblin Market, which is a poetry collection by Christina Rossetti. One of the first poetry collections that I've like read from start to finish, and I loved this. It was really accessible poetry. There were only a few poems where I kind of felt like out of my depth, and just so beautiful, lyrical, evocative, just a really, really amazing poetry collection. Then I have Tess of the D'Urbervilles. This is number 13. And it's only down so low because it just broke my heart and shattered it so much that I'm still kind of reeling from reading Tess of the D'Urbervilles. And I knew it was going to do that, but I said I wanted to read all of Hardy. So I'm still glad I read it, but that I'm reeling from that book, let me tell you. Then we have Silas Marner by George Eliot. This was a really interesting reading experience in that for like the first 100 pages, I was just kind of pacing along. I wasn't enjoying it that much. I enjoyed the beautiful lyrical writing, but wasn't really that attached to any of the characters. And then it was just like something happened and boom, I was there for the story. I really liked it. And it's so short that it would be a really easy one to reread. I ended up really liking it. Next at number 11 is Dracula by Bram Stoker. And this, I was so pleased to be wrong about, whether I would like a book. I did not think I would like Dracula, but I just found myself rooting for Mina Harker and the men in this because Count Dracula is not this romantic Phantom of the Opera, leering kind of guy. No, he is evil, and he will kill you if he needs to. And so I just really enjoy kind of the good versus evil vibe of this novel, and I really liked Bram Stoker's writing style. So I'm really happy to say that I read Dracula. And now we are down to the top 10. So number 10 on the list is The Heir of Redcliffe by Charlotte Mary Young. I loved this book. It's, I would call it like a domestic novel. And what I loved is just all of these scenes with characters hanging out together with one another. And I love it when that's in books, when there's characters that you love and you get to see them spending time with one another. It's like you get to have a big party with them. So I really enjoy that about it. It does have some really sad things that happen, but I kind of, I'm bracing myself whenever I read Victorian fiction that I will be experiencing all of the emotions whenever I read a Victorian novel. So I was kind of prepared for that. And yeah, I definitely recommend it. It made me really, really eager to pick up some more Charlotte Mary Young, and Heart's Ease by her, which is her Pride and Prejudice retelling, is on my Victober 5-star TBR. So I'll definitely be getting to that. Then A Burglary by Amy Dillwyn. This is a really fun, it's a novel with a little bit of everything. It's got some mystery, it's got some romance, it's humorous, and it's got some really great dialogue. It was such an approachable Victorian novel. I think it's a really great one if you're new to Victorian novels to start with. What I loved about it too is only a few chapters in, you find out who the burglar is, and you know who he is through the rest of the book. But it's what makes it interesting is seeing the other characters interacting with him and seeing kind of who can see through his facade that he's putting on and who can't. It was just a really, really fun, engaging Victorian novel. Now down to number 8. So I do have 2 rereads on here, and they're both by Elizabeth Gaskell, but I wanted to include her in the ranking because she is Elizabeth Gaskell. So the next one is Cranford. So Cranford, I had read it, I think it was 2012 for the first time. So it was really nice to revisit it finally. And I got a little bit worried about halfway into it. I was like, this is just a steady 3-star read. Why did I give it 4 stars before? But then there are some events at the end that really get you just in all the feels. And I was like, okay, this is why it was 4 stars. So it is not going to be this like page turner, like, oh, I just have to know what's going to happen next. But if you want just a slow and gentle novel, to read before bed, I think you would really enjoy Cranford. And I just had to include it on the list. Then we have The Law and the Lady coming in at number 7. I told my friends Becky and Bethany, the only complaint I had with this book was I could not read it fast enough. I could not put this book down. I was devastated. I had to do real life in the time that I wanted to read this book. What's crazy is like, a fair chunk of the mystery when you are around 30 pages in, and then the rest of the book, you're trying to figure out the rest of the mystery. I could not put it down. It was so good. So pacey. I was so excited to have another Wilkie Collins to love. Yeah, I can't recommend The Law and the Lady enough. Then coming in at number 6 is The Letters of Mrs. Gaskell. This is a collection of Elizabeth Gaskell's letters. It was so fun to read. I felt so nosy getting to, know about all this Victorian gossip, like meeting Charlotte Bronte for the first time. And she talks about how she doesn't like Robert Browning because he fell asleep when she was talking to him, and getting to know that she went to the same, the same passion play that is hosted right outside of Heidelberg every 10 years, that Maud Hart Lovelace, another favorite author, went to. Getting to hear that Cranford was the only one of her books that she likes to reread. It was all just so fun to get to know this amazing woman, and I loved her even more after reading this. There's also the further letters of Mrs. Gaskell, so I think at some point I will be picking that up. But I think they're both out of print, unfortunately. So you'll have to buy them used if you want them. Then we have The Doctor's Wife coming in at number 5. This is a Mary Elizabeth Braddon book, and very different from Lady Audley's Secret in that it's a lot more of it's the plot is calmer. There's definitely some drama that happens, but it is not this like breakneck speed where I feel like Lady Audley's Secret, I loved it for being a page turner, whereas this, I loved it for kind of being this deep character study. And I think people can kind of think with genre fiction, they automatically, it can sometimes be used as a reductive term. And so I think the same thing for a sensation novel, but there really can be such beautiful writing in sensation novels, and this is no exception. And what I love too is there is a character in it who is a sensation novelist. So it's very meta in some places, and so much talk about different Victorian novels. She loves Dombey and Son, the main character Isabel, which made me so excited because I'm like, I love Dombey and Son too, Isabel. In at number 4 is Adam Bede by George Eliot. I loved this book. I loved this book. This will come as no surprise if you have been following me since October, but it's just such a great combination of fascinating characters, a really gripping plot, and her writing is so stunning with the descriptions of settings, with the poignant observations about humanity, about religion, about politics, society, ethics. It's just, I loved this book. Okay, then for number 3 is Granya by Emily Lawless. This book packs such a punch. It has so much emotional force in it. You're following this one character where she is really not happy with how things are turning out for her life. And as these really, these isolated Aran Islands that they're set on, she feels so trapped and isolated herself. And you get such a picture for these islands, and they're just so interwoven into the plot. And Granya herself, I just was so fascinated by her, and I cannot recommend this book enough. And then number 2 is The Return of the Native by Thomas Hardy. This I think might be my favorite Thomas Hardy now. It starts out where there is a couple who is supposed to get married. They're on their way to their wedding, and they had like the marriage license written, but they had it written for the wrong location. So then they can't get married. And then certain people that hadn't been in the town for a while come back to the town. And there's certain events where there's just this sort of ripple effect that happens. And much the same in Granya, how the landscape is such a huge part of the storyline. Just, such is Egdon Heath in this story. And Thomas Hardy has this way of sometimes slowing down time like it's like molasses, and he's writing, telling you exactly what is happening in this moment. You can smell the grass around you. You can hear, you know, crickets. You can feel the breeze around you. He just brings you right there. I can't recommend it enough. And then lastly, number one, which I feel like is kind of boring for me to say because I do not let up about this novel, is Wives and Daughters. I reread it at the very beginning of the year. And now I think it might just be a yearly tradition because I want to read it all over again. It's been a year since I read it, and I thought, you know what? I miss it so much. It's going to be, I think I would be amazed. I don't think it's an impossibility that another Victorian novel would ever replace it as my favorite Victorian novel, but it would be really hard. So in case you don't know, Wives and Daughters is this kind of quiet, seemingly quiet tale at first about Molly Gibson and what happens when her father decides that since she is motherless, he should probably remarry, as she is turning into a young lady and will need a woman to guide her and mold her. And it's just perfection. That's all it is. So yeah, that was the rundown of the Victorian novels I read in 2019. Here's to so many great Victorian reads in the year 2020. Hopefully several new favorites. And I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will be back for another video soon. Bye.